great heavenly evil demon king? Upon hearing this, Lin Dong's expression instantly changed drastically. It had been mentioned before by the Flame Lord that the demon-suppressing prison he had sealed was primarily to suppress the great heavenly evil demon king. To deal with this disturbance, the Flame Lord had even specifically recalled all his avatar's powers, but unexpectedly, even with such precautions, they still failed to suppress the great heavenly evil demon king. The Lord of Space, standing nearby, also slowly withdrew the smile from his face. His silver eyes gleamed with a cold light as he fixed his gaze on the third Demon King's hall and spoke coldly. So, it turns out that all this effort was not aimed at dealing with the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness, but rather to rescue the great heavenly evil Demon King. Heh, not entirely. The third Demon King's hall smiled slightly and replied, "If we can rescue the great heavenly evil Demon King and take the opportunity to deal with the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness, that would indeed be the best outcome. Since that's the case, I'll have to keep you here as compensation." The Lord of Space's face showed a smile, though it was filled with a chilling coldness. He slowly extended his hand from his sleeve. His palm was withered and thin, but at his fingertips, a silver light flickered, the unmistakable power of the Space Ancestral Talisman. Is that so? The third Demon King's hall slightly narrowed his eyes, and the mysterious eye in his palm opened just a sliver more. "I've never liked you, and today, I'll make sure to slap you 2 ears, the Lord of Space laughed. Heh! The third Demon King's hall also smiled. In the next moment, his pupils constricted slightly, and the hand with the strange eye suddenly slammed backward with a powerful force, sending a surging wave of demonic energy sweeping through the area. Boom! As the demonic hand swept past, the space around it distorted, and a silver fist flew out, colliding violently with it. The violent shockwaves reverberated in the sky with thunderous roars. "After all these years, you still like to use such methods." The third Demon King's hall tilted his head and looked at the silver-eyed figure slowly appearing behind him, sneering. Lin Dong's eyes flickered with surprise. He glanced toward where the Lord of Space had stood earlier and saw that the Lord of Space there was slowly vanishing. Apparently, in the time Lin Dong had failed to notice, the Lord of Space had already made his move. Impressive, the Lord of Space, Lin Dong couldn't help but praise silently. He had just obtained the Space Ancestral Talisman not long ago, and in terms of mastery over space power, it was clear that he was no match for the Lord of Space. Heh, not bad yourself, hiding for so many years but still not turning into a fool. The Lord of Space smiled, his palm shining with silver light once again. Suddenly, the space around them twisted, and 2 silver space blades, resembling scissors, shot out like lightning toward the third Demon King's hall. Demonic energy erupted from the third Demon King's hall, forming a protective column of demonic energy that blocked the space blades. Both sides moved as fast as lightning, but Lin Dong could clearly feel the terrifying power contained within their blows. At this level, every gesture and motion condensed their strength to the extreme. Their powers seemed pretty evenly matched, Lin Dong murmured, watching the 2 of them fight. While the Lord of Space appeared calm, the third Demon King's hall maintained a friendly smile, but all his actions were brutal and ruthless. Still, their powers seemed fairly equal, and neither side was gaining an advantage. Both of them have passed through the reincarnation tribulation 3 times, so if they continue to fight like this, the outcome will be hard to determine. Huanhuan nodded lightly. And right now, neither of them is intent on killing the other. This battle won't last long. Lin Dong nodded as well. Both of them knew they couldn't kill each other in this state, so their killing intent was somewhat subdued. However, Lin Dong understood that one day, they would truly fight to the death, and at that time, the battle would surely be terrifying. Boom! In the sky, silver light and dark energy clashed, and the 2 figures shook slightly before stabilizing their positions. "Lord of Space, you can't kill me. Why waste time here? Are you waiting for something?" The third Demon King's hall sneered. "Are you not waiting for something as well?" The Lord of Space smiled and replied. Seeing these 2 smiling, yet dangerous individuals, Lin Dong shook his head helplessly. This situation was becoming increasingly troublesome. Let's isolate those alien demons below. Lin Dong glanced at the still chaotic martial gathering island and then turned to Ying Huanhuan. Ying Huanhuan nodded, raising her delicate hand. The air around them froze, and the ice spread like a wall, quickly enveloping the entire martial gathering island. Those alien demons were now trapped outside the ice wall, unable to get back inside. Sensing his frustration, Ying Huanhuan's cool, jade-like hand instinctively gripped his larger hand. A faint smile appeared on her cold and beautiful face, a smile as fleeting and pure as a snow lotus blooming atop an icy peak. "Huh, junior sister, you smiled?" However, before Lin Dong could fully savor this stunning moment, the Lord of Space suddenly widened his eyes, pointed at Ying Huanhuan, and exclaimed loudly. Lin Dong looked at the Lord of Space, who had entered with an air of grandeur but now constantly acted in such an exaggerated manner, and couldn't help feeling both amused and helpless. The other ancient lords were either calm or deeply composed, but this fellow, despite commanding respect during his confrontation with the third Demon King, spoke and acted in a way that was utterly unique. "Junior sister, I didn't expect your smile to be so beautiful. You should smile more often. It'll give us senior brothers more energy to exterminate demons." The Lord of Space leaned closer, his grin widening. "Shut up." Ying Huanhuan bit her silver teeth lightly and shot him a fierce glare. The Lord of Space let out an awkward laugh, patted Lin Dong's shoulder, and gave him a thumbs up. "Brother, you're incredible. Even an ice mountain like her. You've really got some skills. But, I've only just awakened, and my brain's still a little rusty. Don't take anything I say to heart." Before he could finish his sentence, his expression suddenly turned serious. He looked at Lin Dong and spoke earnestly. "I mean it." Lin Dong responded with an awkward chuckle. He had already noticed an icy blade extending from Ying Huanhuan's delicate hand, pressing against the Lord of Space's waist. The Lord of Space's playful demeanor gradually faded as his expression became grave. In a low voice, he said, "It's coming." Lin Dong nodded slightly. He, too, sensed an extremely terrifying presence surging toward them from beneath the sea. Ying Huanhuan's jade-like hand gathered a silent frost, her ice-blue eyes scanning the sea's surface below. Boom! Moments after the Lord of Space spoke, a massive vortex formed on the ocean's surface. Torrents of demonic energy surged out of the whirlpool. Finally, a colossal black shadow burst forth with a roar. As the shadow emerged, the sky darkened. Lin Dong's pupils contracted slightly as he saw the figure. A demon over 10,000 feet tall, its body pitch black like forged steel, covered in hideous scars. It had no eyes, only a massive mouth filled with razor-sharp black teeth. 8 enormous demonic arms extended from its gigantic frame. The great heavenly evil demon king? Lin Dong instantly recognized it. This creature was identical to the great heavenly evil demon that the Yuan sect's 3 giants had once parasitized, except that the typical variant had only 4 arms. This one, however, had 8. Moreover, the aura of this great heavenly evil demon king was overwhelmingly terrifying. Although its energy fluctuated, indicating severe injuries, Lin Dong could sense that, in its prime, this being's strength might have surpassed even that of the third Demon King. No wonder the Flame Lord had once mentioned that the great heavenly evil Demon King's power in the demon prison was second only to the strongest, the Heavenly King. The towering great heavenly evil Demon King hovered in the sky before turning toward Ying Huanhuan. A resonating roar, akin to the cries of countless wild beasts, filled the air. "Ice Lord? So you're still alive." This great heavenly evil demon king evidently possessed a high level of intelligence. Though eyeless, it had no trouble perceiving Ying Huanhuan. "So, you managed to escape after all, you wretched beast." Ying Huanhuan's icy gaze locked onto the great heavenly evil demon king as her voice grew frosty. Heh, it took considerable effort to rescue him. From the demon king's massive shoulder, 2 shadows emerged, their figures gradually solidifying. They bowed slightly toward Ying Huanhuan, speaking in unison. "Ice Lord, it has been 10,000 years. I trust you've been well." Well. If it isn't the fourth Demon King and the fifth Demon King. Quite the turnout you have here, the Lord of Space remarked, his eyes narrowing before a faint smile returned to his face. Lin Dong gripped his thunderbow tightly, his gaze filled with vigilance. The lineup before them was terrifying. 3 of the top-ranked Demon Kings of the Demon Prison had gathered. And if the great heavenly evil Demon King was included, they now faced 4 entities, each on par with peak powerhouses who had endured 3 reincarnation tribulations. Not much choice. The Flame Lord is no pushover. Without such measures, we'd never have freed the great heavenly evil Demon King. The 4th Demon King chuckled softly. And that fellow you mentioned is catching up, the Lord of Space said with a faint smile. As his voice fell, the distant horizon suddenly ignited. Flames spread across the sky, sweeping closer. In the next instant, the fiery glow reached the island's sky. The fire dispersed, revealing the Flame Lord. At that moment, the Flame Lord's hair was slightly disheveled, his face pale, clear evidence of a fierce battle. He glanced at the Lord of Space and Lin Dong before turning his attention to Huanhuan. With a helpless sigh, he said, "Got caught off guard." Huanhuan nodded slightly but said nothing more. "Oh dear, it's been so long since we've had such excitement." The 3rd Demon King stretched lazily, glancing with a smile at Huanhuan and the others. Then, he extended his hand, counting with his fingers, and said, "It seems we have the advantage in numbers here. How about we settle this right now?" "Haha, and what if you have the numbers? How could I possibly miss out on such an occasion?" Before the 3rd Demon King's voice faded, a thunderous laugh resounded through the heavens and earth. Lin Dong's heart stirred as he turned his head, spotting a burst of dazzling purple-gold light erupting from the primordial tower. Well, this just got interesting. Seeing this, Lin Dong exhaled lightly. The Lord of the Primordial Wilderness was emerging too, it seemed. Judging by this, was a grand battle about to break out here and now? Purple gold light surged across the sky, spilling from the apex of the primordial tower, illuminating the ocean for 1,000 miles and driving back the dark miasma brought by the great heavenly evil Demon King. Sunlight returned to the skies, casting its warm glow upon the world below. "The Lord of the Primordial Wilderness," murmured the 3rd Demon King and his companions, their eyes narrowing slightly. From the tower's apex, a colossal figure began to take shape within the purple-gold radiance, growing rapidly until it spanned 10,000 feet in height, matching the great heavenly evil Demon King in sheer size. Haha, what luck to step out and witness such excitement. The purple-gold giant tilted its head back and roared with laughter, a sound like rolling thunder that stirred up towering waves on the ocean's surface. Tempests formed in the heavens, responding to its voice. Humph! A low growl rumbled from the great, heavenly, evil Demon King's massive maw. Waves of dark miasma surged forth, clashing against the purple-gold light. "You're a stubborn beast, aren't you? Even after all that, you still refuse to die." The Lord of the Primordial Wilderness gazed at the great heavenly evil Demon King, shaking his head regretfully. "It took considerable effort to crush and seal you back then, and yet, here you are again. That was merely a trick on your part. Had it been a fair fight, the outcome might have been different." The great heavenly evil Demon King's ominous voice echoed across the skies. "Unconvinced? How about we settle it now?" The Lord of the Primordial Wilderness's giant eyes fixed on the great heavenly evil Demon King, his immense form radiating an aura of unshakable battle intent. "Patience, patience. The time will come, and when it does, we won't hold back." The 3rd Demon King smiled faintly and waved his hand dismissively. While they currently held a slight numerical advantage, the great heavenly evil Demon King had yet to fully recover his strength after being unsealed. A fight now would be uncertain at best. This was not the right moment. "When that time comes, you won't have another chance to lurk in the shadows," the Flame Lord said coldly. "Flame Lord, it's unwise to make such bold claims now." The 4th Demon King chuckled, his eyes gleaming with a chilling killing intent. "This time, it's your side that will lose, and we won't give you any opportunity to turn things around. This realm will belong to the alien demon clan. I'd love to see you try. The Lord of Space smiled, his silver eyes glinting with frosty light. The two sides faced off, their auras surging in stark opposition. These were the most powerful entities in this realm, and the fate of countless lives hung in the balance. There will be a chance, but not now. You're waiting for the Ice Lord to awaken fully, and we're waiting for the Heavenly King to recover. When that time comes, we'll settle the ancient scores once and for all. The third Demon King glanced at Huanhuan, chuckling lightly. Our goal this time has been achieved, so we'll take our leave for now. He paused and then added with a smile. And by the way, the Second Great War has now begun. This time, it will be you who loses. Ha ha. As his laughter faded, the third Demon King waved his sleeve, unleashing a surge of dark miasma that coalesced into a massive vortex in the sky. The group disappeared into the swirling darkness, while the sea of alien demons below swarmed upward like locusts, vanishing into the vortex. The vortex spun rapidly, dissolving into nothingness. With the departure of the invaders, the oppressive miasma shrouding the heavens dissipated. Lin Dong gazed at the sky, which had calmed once again, and let out a quiet sigh of relief. He knew that today's battle wouldn't happen. Neither the Heavenly King nor the second Demon King of the demon prison had shown up, and the great Heavenly Evil Demon King still hadn't regained his full strength. Naturally, the demon prison wouldn't choose to go to war under such circumstances. However, he had a premonition that the day when they would fight might not be too far off. At that moment, the gigantic form of the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness rapidly shrank, transforming into the figure of a massive iron tower about 2 meters tall. His skin shimmered with a golden-purple light, exuding an indescribable sense of power. In terms of pure physical strength, the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness might be the strongest person alive today. Hee hee, thanks for the protection this time, the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness said, looking at Lin Dong with a smile and a slight bow. Lin Dong smiled wryly and shook his head. I didn't help much. With his current strength, he could only compete with the demon prison's powerful beings at the level of the Seven Kings Hall. But those on the next tier, like the beings from the third Demon King's Hall, who had survived 3 reincarnation tribulations, were far beyond his abilities. During the earlier confrontation, he had clearly found it difficult to intervene. The thought made him sigh inwardly. His strength was still insufficient, despite all his efforts. Sensing the weight in his expression, Huanhuan gently squeezed his hand, and Lin Dong noticed it. He returned her a smile. No matter how difficult things got, he would never give up easily. The Flame Lord, Lord of Space, and Lord of the Primordial Wilderness exchanged looks and paused for a moment. Their expressions were a bit strange, as if they were deep in thought. Perhaps Thunder Lord and Dark Lord will arrive soon, said the Flame Lord, glancing at Huanhuan. Lin Dong's heart jolted. If even Thunder Lord and Dark Lord were coming, then all the 8 ancient lords, except for the Devouring Lord and the Lord of Life and Death, would likely be present. Let's head to the island first, Lin Dong said. The Flame Lord and the others looked at Huanhuan, and she nodded slightly before taking Lin Dong's hand and flying toward the island. Watching them, the Flame Lord, Lord of Space, and Lord of the Primordial Wilderness exchanged another glance, their gazes flickering. Flame Lord, what's going on here? Lord of Space asked after a moment, noticing that Huanhuan clearly had deep feelings for Lin Dong. The Flame Lord shook his head helplessly, his eyes complex. She knows what's going on. He didn't elaborate further and immediately took off. The Lord of Space and the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness shared a look and let out a bitter laugh before quickly following. On Martial Gathering Island, the battlefield from earlier had left the place in chaos. Lin Dong and the others went straight to the pavilion, followed by Qing Tan and the leaders of the Celestial Windsea region. However, apart from Qing Tan, the others dared not come too close to the pavilion, gazing at the figures inside with a mixture of awe and reverence. Clearly, they had witnessed the emergence of the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness earlier, and seeing the imposing presence of the others, they couldn't help but feel a deep sense of dread. These were all peak experts, both past and present, and their significance was not lost on them. Inside the pavilion, the group sat quietly. The others didn't dare approach, So Lindong had Qingtan serve tea. The pavilion fell into a brief silence. Huanhuan sat beside Lindong, her ice-blue hair cascading down her slender waist. She stared down at the floor, a lock of hair between her delicate fingers, absent-mindedly twirling it as she remained silent. The Flame Lord, Lord of Space, and the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness were equally quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. Lindong sighed inwardly at the stillness. It seemed this silence would be the only thing for now. The quiet lasted for about an hour. Huanhuan finally raised her head slightly, her beautiful eyes gazing into the distance. "They're here." As her voice fell, a faint rumble of thunder echoed from the distance. A bolt of lightning streaked across the sky and, in the next instant, appeared in the pavilion. It was none other than Thunder Lord. Not long after Thunder Lord appeared, the previously bright sky suddenly darkened for a moment. Qingtan couldn't help but utter a soft, hum? The darkness lasted only a brief moment, and when Lindong and the others turned their eyes to an empty seat in the pavilion, they saw, to their surprise, a figure in black armor lounging lazily there. Her deep, dark eyes scanned the room before landing on Huanhuan. A smile slowly spread across her face. "Little junior sister, long time no see. Did you miss me?" Huanhuan looked at the Dark Lord, her ice-blue eyes flickering with emotion. After a moment, she softly replied, "I'm just glad you're fine. I'm not like those idiots." "Of course, I'm fine," the Dark Lord said with a smile. Then her gaze shifted to Lindong. Surprise flashed in her eyes. "Not bad, kid. You've reached the reincarnation stage. But you're still quite a bit behind little junior sister. Back then, you swore you'd." Huanhuan's crescent-shaped brows furrowed slightly as her voice rose. "Fine, I won't say any more." The Dark Lord elegantly spread his hands, and then turned to the Flame Lord. "The great heavenly evil demon king was rescued?" The Flame Lord nodded. "Caught off guard. We lost this round," said the Lord of Space. "These guys are as cunning as ever. I was trying to pinpoint their location but ended up being trapped by their plan. They exploited a flaw in our defenses and used it to snatch away the great heavenly evil demon king," gritted the Thunder Lord through clenched teeth. "You're always rushing headlong into things. It's no wonder problems arise," the Dark Lord remarked with a sidelong glance at the Thunder Lord. Hearing this, the Thunder Lord chuckled awkwardly. Now that they've rescued the great heavenly evil demon king, their next step will undoubtedly be to fully restore the heavenly king, the Flame Lord said slowly. "Once the heavenly king is fully restored, I imagine it will mark the true beginning of the second great war between heaven and earth." At the mention of the heavenly king, the group in the hall fell silent, a flicker of apprehension flashing through their eyes. Then, their gazes collectively shifted toward Huanhuan. Huanhuan held a jade-green cup in her delicate hands, staring at the reflection of her beautiful face in the tea. Finally, she sighed softly, her voice echoing gently through the hall. "Activate the Ancestral Palace." The Ancestral Palace? When these three words were spoken, the expressions of the Dark Lord and the others grew solemn. After a brief hesitation, their eyes fixed on Huanhuan. "Are you certain?" the Dark Lord asked. Huanhuan nodded slightly. "What is the Ancestral Palace?" Lindong asked, sensing the tension in the air and feeling a growing unease. Raising her delicate face, her ice-blue eyes met Lindong's. With a soft smile, she replied, "It's a palace left behind by my master. Your spiritual energy has reached the great Talisman Grandmaster realm, correct? But you have yet to form a divine palace?" Lindong nodded. "At that level, one could transform the Naiwan Palace into a divine palace. Generally, this marked the pinnacle of spiritual energy cultivation, known as the Divine Palace realm. However, throughout history, very few had successfully reached this stage. Although Lindong's talent for spiritual energy was extraordinary, he had not yet managed to transform his Naiwan Palace into a divine palace. He understood that this step was not easily taken. "You want him to enter the Ancestral Palace to form a divine palace?" the Dark Lord asked, casting a glance at Lindong. "That's no easy task. Among us, only you have cultivated a divine palace." The rest of us have barely reached the half-step divine palace realm with our spiritual energy. He should be capable, Huanhuan replied confidently. What benefit does the ancestral palace have for you? Lindong asked, his sharp gaze fixed on Huanhuan. He could sense she was avoiding something. The ancestral palace has miraculous effects on cultivation. When the time is right, we will open it, allowing those in the revolution stage to enter. Typically, there's about a 30% chance of them successfully breaking through, Huanhuan explained. Lindong frowned slightly, staring at her intently. She met his gaze with her ice-blue eyes. For some reason, the atmosphere between them grew tense. Ahem. The Dark Lord coughed lightly, breaking the tension. Looking at Lindong, he said meaningfully, Lindong, there are some things you can only change when you have enough power. Right now, you lack the strength to do so. Entering the ancestral palace could give you the qualifications you need. Is that really the case? Lindong asked, still gazing at Huanhuan without acknowledging the Dark Lord's words. Huanhuan nodded gently. Trust me, all right? Entering the ancestral palace will benefit you. Lindong slowly withdrew his gaze. At this point, what more could he say? Yin, stop hiding. With so many old friends here, won't you come out and say hello? The Lord of Space suddenly spoke, his silver eyes fixed on Lindong's body. As his voice fell, a gentle light emanated from within Lindong. Yin appeared, shaking his head with a mix of emotions as he looked at the familiar faces before him. Yin, we may need your help to activate the ancestral palace, Huanhuan said, her gaze soft. Yin looked at her. His lips moved as though to speak, but in the end, he smiled bitterly and nodded. The Flame Lord cleared his throat. Also, during the great heavenly evil demon king's escape, many of the suppressed alien demons managed to flee as well. The Chaos Demon Sea is in utter turmoil, and the demon prison seems to have no intention of imposing order. It seems they're serious. This great war between heaven and earth has already begun. They're trying to use the chaos to tie us down, the Lord of Space said, stroking his chin. A flash of contemplation crossed his silver eyes. The Flame Lord and the others nodded slightly. The alien demons were vast in number and immensely powerful, making it impossible for any single force in the Chaos Demon Sea to withstand them. If left unchecked, the chaos would likely result in significant casualties across the region. Let's form an alliance in the Chaos Demon Sea, Lindong suggested after some thought. In such dire times, if the forces of the Chaos Demon Sea didn't unite, they would likely be devoured one by the alien demons. An alliance is feasible, but the execution could be troublesome, remarked the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness with a nod. Establishing such a massive alliance would undoubtedly demand immense effort, which they clearly lacked. We don't need to form it ourselves. Within the Chaos Demon Sea, there exists a prominent force called the Flame Deity Palace, whose palace master is the wielder of the Flame Ancestral Talisman. The Flame Deity Palace commands significant influence here. Given the current alien demon threat, with a bit of guidance, forming an alliance wouldn't be too difficult, Lindong continued. As for the complex operations that would follow the formation of the alliance, no one would be more suitable for the task than Tang Xinlian, the palace master of the Flame Deity Palace. Of course, this might still require the involvement of a few key figures. After all, in the Chaos Demon Sea, there are some deeply rooted factions and ancient races, Lindong added. Among the most powerful forces in the Chaos Demon Sea were not the humans but the Sea Demon clans. Convincing them to join the alliance would be no easy task. The Sea Demon clans? I can handle that. Among their great clans, I share some ties with their ancestors, said the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness. As a member of the Sea Giant clan, the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness approaching them should make it easier for the Sea Demon clans to join the alliance, Huanhuan said softly. Lindong glanced at her but said nothing, merely nodding in agreement. In that case, let's set off for the Flame Deity Palace tomorrow. Over the past couple of months, the alien demons have ravaged the Chaos Demon Sea, and the various factions here have suffered heavy losses. If we rally them now, the timing should be just right for maximum effect, Lindong concluded. Everyone nodded in agreement and soon dispersed. Qingtan hesitated for a moment before following them out. In the vast, now empty building, Only Lin Dong and Ying Huanhuan remained. Lin Dong gazed at the silent Ying Huanhuan with a helpless shake of his head before abruptly standing as if to leave. Sensing his movement, Ying Huanhuan bit her lip. Her delicate hands clenched tightly as a surge of sorrow welled up within her. Yet Lin Dong didn't leave. Instead, he approached Ying Huanhuan, clasping her cool, jade-like hand firmly and pulling her into his embrace. His arm wrapped around her slender waist as he buried his head lightly in her icy blue hair. "Has your memory returned?" Lin Dong asked softly. Her behavior today had been uncharacteristic. "Some of it. That's why I recognize them and remember certain things," Ying Huanhuan replied hesitantly. Lin Dong nodded. It explained her clear knowledge of ancient events. "Don't worry, I'm still Ying Huanhuan," she said with a faint smile, fully aware of Lin Dong's concerns. "Whatever happens, don't lie to me, all right?" Lin Dong said hoarsely, inhaling her faint fragrance as he held her tightly. Ying Huanhuan leaned her face lightly against his shoulder, her breath brushing his neck. She murmured a soft followed by a barely audible whisper to herself, "I don't want to lie to you, either." After a long while, Lin Dong finally left. Ying Huanhuan, now alone, walked to the balcony, her beautiful eyes gazing at the darkened sea. The sea breeze tousled her long hair as she stood there, lost in thought. "Are you really planning to let him enter the Ancestral Palace?" a voice asked suddenly from behind. Ying Huanhuan turned to see the Dark Lord leaning casually against a pillar, her slender arms crossed as her dark, lustrous eyes observed her. "He needs to condense a divine palace," Ying Huanhuan replied. "Opening the Ancestral Palace requires the combined efforts of at least 6 of the 8 ancient lords. For that, you'd have to unleash the power you've long suppressed. But once that power is unleashed, it won't be so easily restrained again," the Dark Lord warned. "Your former power was terrifying, yes, but it froze all your emotions. Are you sure that, if that power revives, you'll still be able to treat him the way you do now?" Ying Huanhuan sat down on a nearby bench, curling her long legs beneath her as her icy blue hair cascaded over her shoulders, lending her an air of fragility. "I understand, but life rarely offers perfect solutions. The demon prison is clearly brewing something. I can feel it. The Heavenly King's Hall seems close to full restoration." The Dark Lord sighed as she sat beside her, wrapping an arm around Ying Huanhuan's cold frame. Her heart ached as she thought back to the ancient times when she had first met Ying Huanhuan as a cheerful and lively young girl. Over time, however, the smile on her face had faded, especially after their master foretold his demise and entrusted the protection of countless lives to her. "Actually, we owe that boy some gratitude. At least he brings you joy and worry," the Dark Lord murmured softly. "Don't tell him about this," Ying Huanhuan replied. "Otherwise, knowing his temperament, he'll never go to the Ancestral Palace. Even now, you're still thinking of him," the Dark Lord said with a helpless tone. Leaning against the Dark Lord, Ying Huanhuan said, "I know deep down. He's always been trying to surpass me. That way, he can stand proudly and let me follow behind him." "Wishful thinking," the Dark Lord scoffed. "If this little junior sister of his were so easily surpassed, would the master have entrusted such a great responsibility to her?" But Ying Huanhuan only smiled gently and whispered, "I believe in him." The Dark Lord was startled and looked down at her. At that moment, a faint, tender curve appeared on Ying Huanhuan's lips, and her bright eyes shone with unwavering confidence. "He'll do it." From the pavilion, her soft voice carried a resolute certainty that brooked no argument. The next morning, Lin Dong and his group prepared to depart. As they stepped out of the pavilion, they found the leaders of the Celestial Wind Sea region waiting anxiously outside. The moment they appeared, the leaders quickly surrounded them. "Brother Lin Dong, the Chaos Demon Sea remains in utter turmoil. We've heard that some regions have already been completely devastated by the alien demons. If you leave now, what will happen to us in the Celestial Wind Sea region?" Gutong, evidently chosen to speak on behalf of the group, addressed Lin Dong. Even these powerful figures from the sea region seemed wary of the illustrious individuals standing before them, directing their pleas specifically to the relatively approachable Lin Dong. Lin Dong chuckled, noting their obvious fear of the alien demons. It seems the alien demons have truly terrified you all. That's not a bad thing. This kind of sentiment will greatly help in forming the alliance. Patriarch Gu, don't worry. No alien demon will dare step into this sea again. Moreover, we are heading to the Flame Deity Palace to establish the Chaos Demon Sea Alliance. Once the alliance is formed, you'll have nothing to fear, Lin Dong reassured them. An alliance? The leader's eyes lit up at the word. With their own strength insufficient for self-defense, the idea of an alliance clearly offered immense hope. Once the alliance is announced, send representatives to the Flame Deity Palace. At that time, all major sea regions will be linked by teleportation arrays. If trouble arises, reinforcements will arrive immediately, Lin Dong added with a confident smile. Silver light shimmered around him, enveloping his group in a protective glow. So, everyone, just wait for the good news. The silver radiance gradually brightened, and with Lin Dong's parting words, his group vanished into thin air, leaving behind the eagerly hopeful leaders of the Celestial Wind Sea region. Flame Deity Palace. Inside a grand hall, a fiery red figure sat at the head. The hall was bustling with activity as streams of information were swiftly reported and orders were passed down. Tang Xinlian sat with an air of elegance. Today, clad in a crimson gown, she appeared softer and less commanding than her usual martial demeanor. As urgent reports continued to pour in, her delicate brows furrowed slightly. The chaos in the Demon Sea had spread to the Flame Deity Palace's domain, bringing waves of alien demon attacks. However, with Qingji's permanent presence bolstering the palace, many top-tier experts had gathered, greatly enhancing the palace's strength. Under Tang Xinlian's leadership, the initial attacks had been repelled, confining the invaders to the edges of the Flame Deity Palace's territory. Although the attacks had been contained, the complex military situation kept Tang Xinlian exceptionally busy. In the hall, her clear voice rang out as she issued command after command, with elders swiftly carrying out her orders. Despite the commotion, the scene remained orderly. Elderling, alien demons have appeared near North Sea City. Reports suggest their number is around 500, led by an alien demon general. Take 1,000 flame deity guards to eliminate them. You may mobilize the city's defenders as needed. With her final directive, Tang Xinlian flicked her slender finger, sending a crimson token to an elderly man in green robes. Accepting the order, he immediately departed. Phew. Tang Xinlian exhaled softly after finishing her tasks. Well, little Tang Xinlian is truly remarkable. With you in charge of the Flame Deity Palace, I can rest easy, Imo Luo remarked from his seat on the right side of the hall, sipping tea with a pleased smile. Beside him, Qingji chuckled and shook his head. This guy. It's a good thing he found such an exceptional disciple, or Flame Deity Palace might have truly crumbled under his management. Tang Xinlian shot a glance at Imo Luo but didn't respond. Ahem, well, never mind, old Qing. Let's go outside for a game of chess. Imo Luo, catching Tang Xinlian's glare, managed an awkward smile and gestured to Qingji. Tang Xinlian gritted her teeth and spoke coldly. Master, aren't you being a bit too carefree? If you're really so idle, I can assign you some tasks. Didn't we agree I'd only step in for major issues? Imo Luo replied with a forced smile. Tang Xinlian snorted. With Flame Deity Palace's rapid expansion, Missouri Luo's habit of delegating everything had only intensified. Seeing Tang Xinlian's rising frustration, Imo Luo didn't dare provoke her further. Exchanging a glance with Qingji, he prepared to make a quick exit. However, Qingji paused, smiling as his expression changed. Forget it. There's a distinguished guest at Flame Deity Palace today. You should stay to welcome them properly. A distinguished guest? Both Imo Luo and Tang Xinlian were momentarily taken aback. Just as Qingji finished speaking, the space within the palace began to distort, and dazzling silver light erupted. As it faded, several figures appeared in the main hall. A young man at the front offered Imo Luo a slight smile. You, Lin? Imo Luo was stunned at the sight of the young man. But before he could speak, Tang Xinlian, seated at the head, beamed with joy. Lin Dong, Senior Qingji, Senior Imo Luo, Lady Xinlian, It's been a while. Lin Dong greeted them warmly, clasping his hands with a smile. Qing Ji and Mo Luo returned his smile, but their gaze quickly shifted to the group behind Lin Dong, focusing intently on the Flame Lord and the others. If I'm not mistaken, Qing Ji began with a smile. These should be the renowned ancient lords, correct? Though he hadn't been qualified to converse with the Flame Lord and the others back in ancient times, he clearly recognized their aura, which was unmatched in the entire world. The ancient lords? Mo Luo was startled. Although he had reached the reincarnation stage, he couldn't gauge the depth of the Flame Lord and his companion's powers. Clicking his tongue in admiration, he thought, as expected of the direct disciples of the ancestral Talisman master. The Flame Lord and his companions smiled humbly at Qing Ji and Mo Luo, showing no sign of arrogance despite their legendary status. You've reached the reincarnation stage too, kid? Mo Luo's face suddenly changed as he noticed Lin Dong, exclaiming in surprise. Just recently, Lin Dong replied with a grin. Impressive as always, Mo Luo marveled, shaking his head. After so many years of cultivation, he had only just reached the reincarnation stage last year. Yet here Lin Dong was, already catching up. You'd only feel inferior comparing yourself to him, Qing Ji joked, his eyes scanning Lin Dong with a nod. It seems you've acquired the primordial dragon bones. Thanks to your recommendation, Senior Qing Ji, Lin Dong replied. If it weren't for you directing me to the dragon clan, I wouldn't have obtained it. That was all your own doing. I coveted those primordial dragon bones for ages, but it just wasn't meant to be, Qing Ji chuckled, shaking his head. Lin Dong smiled, sensing that Qing Ji's power had increased, likely reaching around the level of 2 reincarnation tribulations, a noticeable improvement since their last encounter. Lin Dong, you've really reached the reincarnation stage? Tang Xinlian came running down from her seat, looking him up and down with delight in her eyes. Nearby, Huanhuan glanced at Tang Xinlian, who was dressed in a striking red gown, looking both bold and graceful. Huanhuan then shot Lin Dong a playful look. Noticing her gaze, Lin Dong gave a sheepish laugh and nodded at Tang Xinlian before introducing everyone behind him. Heh, may I ask the reason for your visit to Flame Deity Palace? Mo Luo asked, his curiosity piqued by the impressive group. It's likely related to the recent troubles with the alien demons in the Chaos Demon Sea, Tang Xinlian said, flashing a bright smile. She glanced at Lin Dong. If I'm not mistaken, you're hoping to have Flame Deity Palace rally the forces in the Chaos Demon Sea to confront the alien demons, right? Smart guess. Lin Dong gave her a thumbs up. The alien demons are incredibly powerful, and no single force can stop them. If we allow them to run rampant, the Chaos Demon Sea will suffer devastating losses. So, we're hoping Flame Deity Palace can form an alliance to resist the alien demons in the Chaos Demon Sea. An alliance? Mo Luo was surprised. Stroking his chin, he remarked, while Flame Deity Palace has some influence, not everyone in the Chaos Demon Sea is inclined to follow us. Heh, those factions will have others to help persuade them. Lin Dong gestured to the Flame Lord and the others behind him as he spoke. Mo Luo hesitated slightly before turning to Tang Xinlian. You should ask this girl. She's the current master of the Flame Deity Palace now. Lin Dong was speechless. This guy's knack for shirking responsibility was becoming more impressive. He had even handed over the position of palace master to Tang Xinlian. Lin Dong's gaze shifted to Tang Xinlian, who was already looking at him. Her bright, alluring eyes made him feel slightly uneasy. He quickly forced a smile and said, "What does Miss Xinlian think?" The alliance could indeed help suppress the chaos in the Chaos Demon Sea, Tang Xinlian said with a faint smile, resting her delicate hand on her slim elbow and propping her snow-white, slightly pointed chin thoughtfully. But our Flame Deity Palace doesn't seem to gain much from this. At the moment, we can still hold our own. Lin Dong was taken aback. Thinking about her own faction's interests at a time like this seemed a bit inappropriate. With Tang Xinlian's sharp mind, she surely understood the devastation that unchecked alien demons could cause, didn't she? Miss Tang is joking with you, Huanhuan interjected. Lin Dong, hearing this, finally noticed the teasing smile tugging at the corners of Tang Xinlian's lips. He shook his head helplessly. Do you misunderstand me that much? Tang Xinlian glanced at Lin Dong before turning her beautiful eyes to Ying Huanhuan. She extended her slender, jade-like hand casually and smiled. You must be Ying Huanhuan. Lin Dong has mentioned you before. Once, I even asked him who he thought was prettier, you or me. Lin Dong's body stiffened instantly. He stared in disbelief at Tang Xinlian, whose eyes flashed with mischievous delight. Oh! Ying Huanhuan responded with a light smile.